objects had souls. Regto asked if he'd fought back, but Rudo admitted he hadn't. He also asked if Regto truly believed that a cared-for object could gain a soul over time. While washing him clean, Regto explained that it was just an old tale meant to encourage people to value what they owned, but personally, he liked to think every object had a soul. Rudo's curiosity deepened, and he asked whether the objects in their own home also had souls, his gloves included. Regto answered that if Rudo treated them with care, then yes, someday they might. That thought lingered in Rudo's mind as he abruptly woke from the dream, only to find himself chained and being dragged along by Injin. Furious, he demanded to be released, but Injin calmly replied that he was taking him to a safe place. Rudo didn't care. His only focus was getting back to the surface to exact revenge. Hearing this made Injin stop in his tracks. He told Rudo that returning was impossible. The place they called the Sphere floated high in the sky and never stopped moving. He resumed pulling Rudo forward, telling him to accept reality and move on. But Rudo refused to let go of the idea. He was convinced Injin knew a way back and was hiding it. Threatening to shout until more monsters arrived, he demanded answers. Annoyed, Injin said he'd show Rudo exactly what kind of place they were in. He began dragging him roughly, eventually arriving at a surprisingly clean open space in a canyon, far cleaner than the surrounding wasteland. Without explanation, Injin dumped Rudo there, telling him to enjoy himself, then walked away. Rudo cursed at him to at least undo the chains, but Injin disappeared without another word. Before long, several men in gas masks emerged from trucks and made their way toward him. Rudo wondered if they were locals, while they, equally intrigued, speculated about him. His clothes made them suspect he was from the Sphere, and they eagerly approached with questions. Nervously, Rudo admitted he had fallen from there. At that, the men ripped off their masks, thrilled to finally meet a living Sphere dweller, since until now, they had only ever come across corpses. They crowded around, examining his face with a disturbing fascination. Rudo instinctively backed away, but they reassured him they meant no harm and began loosening his restraints. Relieved, he thought they were far kinder than Injin. That relief was short-lived. Moments later, Rudo found himself chained even tighter inside one of their trucks. Confused, he overheard the men outside talking about their good fortune. Capturing a living sparite was rare, and such a find could be sold for a fortune. Sphere dwellers' clothing and body parts already fetched high prices, but a living one would send buyers into a frenzy. The group's leader explains to Rudo that people are willing to pay large sums for spherites, not because they value them, but because they despise them. He vents his anger at the Sphere dwellers who dumped all their waste onto the planet, eventually poisoning the air and creating monsters. Many people lost their lives or homes to these monsters or the toxic environment, and their hatred for spherites runs deep. Whenever they capture one alive, they take extreme vengeance. As a twisted welcome to the surface, the leader offers Rudo rotten meat and other spoiled scraps. He mocks Rudo, claiming that spherites are too pampered to handle such food. But as he tries to force-feed him, he makes a fatal mistake. Rudo bites into his fingers, tearing flesh, and chews it along with the rotten food. Rudo calmly insists that the food is not trash since it's still edible. The men are horrified. They've never encountered someone like him. Fueled by anger at the way people label things as trash and discard them, Rudo refuses to endure it any longer. His power surges, snapping his chains, and he leaps outside. Unleashing his energy into the ground, he causes nearby objects to rise. Watching from afar, Injin is delighted to see that Rudo is a giver. Someone capable of granting life to objects and harnessing their power, just like himself. Meanwhile, Rudo recalls Arteo's words. When objects are treated with care, they, in turn, treat their owners with care. Rudo rips off his mask and seizes the chain binding him, channeling life into it and transforming it into a weapon. The men rush forward, but he slams the chain against the ground, forcing them to fall back. Their leader orders them to destroy the chain, claiming that a giver is powerless without their chosen object. They manage to knock the weapon from his hands, only to be stunned when Rudo picks up a discarded tire and breathes life into it as well. A feat so rare that even seasoned givers struggle to accomplish it. With his new weapon, Rudo quickly overpowers the men and corners their leader, who hurls insults while trembling in fear. Just before Rudo can land a blow, Injin intervenes, snapping him out of his frenzy. The power fades, the tire crumbles to dust, and Rudo's nose starts bleeding as he tries to understand what just happened. Injin warns him that using his abilities so recklessly will drain his body. He apologizes, admitting the fight was a test to confirm Rudo's potential, and offers to explain the truth about the world and his powers. If Rudo agrees to join the Cleaners, a group that battles monsters. Overwhelmed, Rudo refuses. But Injin ignores his protest, hauling him to a clinic while calling a friend to brag about recruiting a genius into the Cleaners. Shocked, Rudo insists he never agreed, but the eccentric doctor, an elderly woman with wide, piercing eyes, tells him to shut up. She berates him for wandering into the poisonous no-man's land and getting himself captured, calling him lucky that Injin saved him twice in one day. Rudo mutters curses under his breath, which only worsens things when he mistakes her for an old man. After treating him, she kicks both of them out. Outside, Rudo thanks Injin for covering the medical bill, but says he only wants information on how to return to the sphere. He has no interest in joining the Cleaners. Injin warns that revealing his origins could get him killed, and that nothing in this world comes free. He leads Rudo into a bleak, dystopian city that, while still rough, is far cleaner than the wasteland outside. They stop for burgers, which Rudo devours after vomiting up the rotten food earlier. He's surprised to learn that the surface isn't entirely garbage. There are functioning cities and people here. Spotting a girl entering a shop, he watches her for a moment before Injin launches into a lesson. The surface not only accumulates trash, but also builds up emotions, which manifest as a strange energy. Trash beasts are one way this energy takes form. While they usually stay near dumps, they sometimes attack cities, and their cores can't be destroyed by normal weapons. Only something like Rudo's gloves can harm them. Rudo is taken aback by the explanation, and Injin goes on to say that when an object is cherished and well cared for over many years, it gathers something called anima. Such items are known as vital instruments, and they're capable of destroying a trash beast's core. However, not everyone can tap into that stored power. Only people like them, known as givers, can do it. The Cleaners are made up entirely of givers, whose job is to hunt down and eliminate trash beasts. Rudo asks if joining the Cleaners will guarantee that Injin will tell him how to return to the sphere. Injin bluntly replies that he has no idea. Rudo explodes at him for misleading him, but Injin calmly reminds him he never claimed to know the way back. He does, however, suggest that his boss is incredibly knowledgeable and might be able to help. This means Rudo will now have to meet Injin's superior before making any decisions. Something he's not thrilled about. Changing the subject, Injin asks about Rudo's gloves. Rudo explains they were a gift from his father, the only thing he has left to remember him by. Injin nods in understanding, realizing why Rudo treasures them so much, and advises him to take good care of them because they carry a powerful soul. The words hit Rudo deeply, especially since others have always mocked his gloves. Suddenly, Injin gets a message and says he needs to meet a colleague. Rudo stands and thanks him for everything, but Injin tosses him a pouch of money, warning him to spend it wisely. Rudo is stunned that he's giving him cash after already helping him so much, until Injin casually mentions that he sold Rudo's clothes to get the money, which also paid for his food and treatment. Outraged, Rudo protests, but Injin points out he couldn't wear sphere clothing here anyway. Before leaving to see his trainer, Injin tells Rudo to stay put. Fuming, Rudo spots a cat snatching his money and dashing off. He gives chase but can't catch it, until he notices a crescent-shaped staff lying in the street. He snatches it up and uses it to stop the cat. Just as he pins the animal down, the staff's furious owner appears, demanding to know why Rudo has his treasured weapon. When Rudo scoffs that it's just a piece of wood, the man becomes even more irritated, retrieves his staff, and shoves Rudo aside, vowing he'll pay for his crime. The man then begins channeling energy into the staff, and Rudo notices it bears the same insignia as Injin's umbrella, marking him as a cleaner. The stranger activates the weapon and attacks, but deliberately misses, revealing that Injin has already told him about Rudo. He introduces himself as Zanka, the one assigned to train him at Injin's request. Zanka remarks that he never expected to have to teach a kid not to steal. Rudo insists he was only borrowing the staff to retrieve his stolen money, but Zanka retorts that his father clearly didn't raise him properly. That insult hits a nerve. Rudo can't stand anyone speaking badly of Reito. But as he recalls his father's words, that if you want someone to listen, you should take a step back and try to understand their perspective. He admits to himself that Zanka has a right to be angry, since he suddenly grabbed something that was valuable to him. Rudo realizes that if someone had taken his gloves, even by accident, he would have been furious too. Accepting responsibility, he apologizes to Zanka, who quickly softens and admits it's fine since the staff was returned. He even concedes that he should have handled the situation more calmly. Rudo is stunned by the sudden shift in attitude, and even more so because it's the first time he's managed to resolve tension with words instead of fighting. He silently acknowledges that Reito's advice had been right more often than he realized. Zanka helps him up and asks about his vital instrument and its abilities. Rudo says his gloves are likely his vital instrument, but he's unsure what they can actually do. Zanka examines them, noting they're impressive, while Rudo keeps marveling at the man's drastically different demeanor. It dawns on Rudo that the change might be due to Zanka smiling. Rudo used to tell him that smiling was the key to making friends. The problem is, Rudo has never smiled before, and he figures it can't be that hard. He attempts one, but the result is so unnerving it nearly makes Zanka recoil in horror. Zanka demands to know what that face was supposed to be and accuses him of mocking him. Confused, Rudo explains that it was his best attempt at a smile. Zanka retorts that even a blind man could tell it wasn't one. So, Rudo closes his eyes and lips to make it look more natural. This time, it's slightly less disturbing, but still enough to keep Zanka irritated. Zanka begins to suspect Rudo has grown arrogant because Injin called him a prodigy, and now he's just messing around. He warns that Rudo will never achieve his goals if he continues acting this way. That remark hits a nerve. Rudo's goals of returning to the sphere and fulfilling Reito's dying wish are no joke to him. He firmly tells Zanka to stop insulting him. The tension spikes as Zanka draws his weapon, saying they're clearly not going to get along. Rudo agrees, yanking a metal rod from a nearby trash bin and activating its power. Zanka is startled that he can awaken a random object as a vital instrument and finally understands why Injin called him a genius. Still, Zanka remains confident that raw talent alone won't be enough to defeat someone who's honed their skills through years of effort. Rudo doesn't realize Zanka's earlier jab was meant to distract him until a staff slams into the ground just inches from his face. Forced to dodge, he tries to back away, but Zanka charges forward and quickly has him pinned. Satisfied with the win, Zanka smirks until he notices something unpleasant on his face. He wipes it off, sniffs it, and freezes in horror. It's poop. Only then does it click that the metal rod Rudo grabbed was actually part of a toilet plunger. Zanka tries to explain, but Rudo isn't interested. Instead, he swings the plunger, which still contains its disgusting payload, like a weapon. Zanka panics, frantically dodging as the foul contents splatter everywhere. The more he avoids, the more Rudo chases, unknowingly turning the fight into a chaotic game of pursuit. Their chase winds through narrow alleys, almost like a slapstick cartoon, until Zanka bolts toward the main street. Just as he thinks he's safe, a stray cat darts in front of him, tripping him up. Rudo seizes the moment, leaping high and bringing the plunger down with full force. Zanka is struck by a barrage of filth, sending him collapsing in shock and disgust. A short while later, Injin arrives to check on them. When he asks if Rudo has met his new instructor, Rudo simply points toward Zanka, now lying in a heap of garbage, twitching in disbelief. Injin, barely able to contain his laughter, helps Zanka clean up and offers him a ride. He teases that he never expected anyone to handle Zanka in such a way. Rudo, meanwhile, is left unsettled after realizing what he'd just been swinging around in public. Injin explains that Zanka might be spoiled, but he's the best there is at training others in the use of vital instruments. Hearing Injin's praise seems to lift Zanka's spirits, making him giggle despite his earlier humiliation. As they settle into the car, Rudo notices a pair of boots in the back seat, just before Injin addresses a woman named Rio. She wakes from a nap, saying she was curious about the newcomer. Rudo is momentarily speechless. She's stunning. Without warning, she begins playing with his unusual hair, making him wonder if he stumbled into paradise. Lost in thought, Rudo barely notices as Injin drives them out of the city, eventually heading toward the cleaner headquarters located deep in the wilderness.